We have special all service long. It's going to be special. So you're going to hear from all kinds of different things. But today we have the privilege of being able to have Spread Truth with us today. There's all kinds of things that they're going to share with us. And we got 2 microphones for them. And you want to come right now? This is Jerry. And if I can have Chris, if you can turn the lights out in the room. This is to the right. There you go. And the one on the bottom. He's got it. Is that good? All right, here we go.
Well, first of all, I just want to say a big thank you to Pastor Will here. Most of you know that he and I go way back to high school days, and we used to play soccer against each other and then together when we were in college. And so we have some kind of funny stories about those days. He was quite fast back in those days. Maybe he still is. You know what I mean? And so it was really good. And then I want to say a thank you to the congregation. You folks have been so faithful in supporting Spread Truth over these years. And from the bottom of our hearts, we want to express our deep appreciation and gratitude for what you've done so the gospel can go around the world. So great is your reward in heaven. We're also privileged today to have some staff people here. First of all, we have Hamisi Kairinga from Spread Truth Africa. He's a director there in Africa. My wife, who's also on staff. You want to stand up, Jeannie, here? Okay, she's there. And then Matt Knobloch, who works also on our staff. He drove all the way from Illinois. He's back. Wave, Matt, you want to wave back there? Okay, he'll be running the slides, so make sure you kind of get to know them afterward. God has been good and very gracious to Spread Truth. It was 4.5 years ago that we actually, most of you know us by being on our resources, the story booklet, the story maker. The 20 years we've been going to New York City, and so it's been incredible what God has done there. But some of you have been familiar with what's been going on in Kenya. So for the last 4.5 years, just 4.5 years, we've actually been in Nairobi, Kenya. And so we have 5 staff people there. God opened that door for us to be there, and he's done some really wonderful things. And so, Hamisi, why don't you just say a little bit about the staff there that you can see the picture of there, and just kind of just express, just who they are and what they do.
Morning, church. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for hosting us again. I didn't play soccer with Will, Pastor Will.
You did play soccer, though.
I played soccer professionally, though. I wasn't as fast as him, though. As you can see on my, I will say, left, that is Kim. Kim is in charge of all our media. And then on my front left will be Vanessa. She's in charge of our FGM program that deals with the young girls. And then the gentleman who is a bit taller is called Ken. He's the man in charge of our projects, or the one who checks what we do, does it make sense, make sure that we use our resources faithfully. And then this lovely lady joined us actually at the beginning of this year, and she's called Foro. She's in charge of all our media and making sure that we post, we get the correct information to the people, and that is the team. And you are truly the professional footballer right there in the middle.
Hamisi when we met him, he was a youth pastor and missions pastor for 17 years at Ridgeways Baptist Church in Nairobi, Kenya. Mm-hmm. Before that, he was not a believer. So why don't you just in maybe a couple of minutes at least share your story of how he came to know Christ from a family in Islam.
Thank you, Jerry. As you've heard, I was born in a Muslim home. I got born again at the age of 14. And like you see, our population there is, in the country, is a population of young people below the age of 35, which is 75% of our country. And I got born again in a dramatic way. I would say God spoke to me in an audible voice and revealed to me that Christ is not just but a prophet. Christ is indeed the Son of God. And I was kicked out of our home, and I had it rough. Sometimes you think when you make the best decision in life, you will have it easy. But my father decided, I have nothing to do with you. But by God's grace, after a while of being in the streets and God taking care of me, went to high school by His mercies. I came back to my dad before I joined the church for full-time ministry, which I served for 17 years, where Jerry found me. And he even preached there one Sunday. My dad actually gave his life to Christ. And he became my #1 supporter. And just to cut the long story short, because of time, and later on he passed on, and he's with the Lord where he is, and I look forward one day to meet him in heaven. And after that is when I served the Lord for a couple of years. God started speaking to me again. One of the things that has been evident in my life is God speaking to me in an audible voice. And He spoke to me again about now I need to get out of the church and be able to serve Him in our republic and in our continent. I did not know how. It was a very difficult decision to make again, because our church, when we started, was a small church of around 300 people. I had like around 15 young people. By the time we left, our church had close to 3,000 people and 400 youth. And it was a very beautiful, big church in the city, and I had to make that decision. God said, it is time for you to get out. And I did not know how it will be. And 4.5 years, as Jerry has spoken, to see what God has done in our country, indeed, I realized that our God is a functional God and is not an abstract God.
Next slide here. As he said, 75% of Kenya's population is 35 years and under. So it's a really, really young country. As a result of that, next door to Kenya is Somalia, and there's a terrorist group led by a man named El-Shabaab. And their goal is to go into Kenya and to recruit young people and radicalize them to form, this group of people that will join them in the terrorism that takes place in different countries. And so the government was really super concerned that this is happening. And so by God's grace, there's a lady named Margaret Kobio who serves right underneath the president of Kenya. And she happened to go to Ridgeways Baptist Church. She found out about Spread Truth, and she liked the things that we were doing. And so we formed a partnership, signed a partnership with the government of Kenya to be able to reach the youth here. And so this is Margaret Kobio. And the next slide here, we'll show you here, there is a crisis of like terrorism and radicalization that is going on there. And so we've partnered with the government. We are able to go into any public school in Kenya and share the gospel. Any public school. And so the doors are pretty incredible. And I'm going to tell you a story here. I'm going to let him tell you a story. That one of the things that happened was a key lady in government. Last time I was there in February, she said, hey, listen, the place where I live is the Cairo Valley. It's a very dangerous place because within this valley, because of drought and cattle, there are two warring tribes. And these are people that are fighting against one another with AK-45s and just shooting one another. And we discussed about going there. Now, again, I'm saying, yes, we'll go there, but I'm not the one going there. These guys are going there. So, yes, we'll go there. And so it was pretty crazy. We're going to do an outreach with the young people, try to reach them in an area that's very, very dangerous. So this just happened just a few months ago. And just to kind of give you the indication that not only are we trying to deal with the young people from the terrorism from outside, but the tribal wars sometimes that happen on the inside. And so we're going to do this crazy outreach, reach out hopefully to 2,000 or 3,000 people, bring a big tent amidst these tribes that are fighting. And so we got a couple of pictures, and he'll tell you the story.
Well, I think Jerry has spoken very well.
I've told the story. So
Yeah.
next slide, okay.
He said well, and as usual, he told us to go. He will pray for us from Greenville. And, and he assured me Pastor Will's church will pray for us. And so we were blessed because this is the valley where a lot of blood has been shed in our country. If you go and Google and check Kerio Valley, you'll see they lose so many young people because of the tribal fighting. And they sent the police to be able to try and bring the tribes together. And 100 policemen were killed. And that was said even with the government official who were with him in Bloomington, that 100 police were killed. So we debated about going there, like, is it safe? But someone had to go. And we felt like, what a best way to die than in the mission field. And when we got there, we were worried because how do you bring, Jerry kept on asking me, how do you bring the two tribes together in a tent? And they're fighting and they have guns and they have AK-47. And this is way in the bush. And we did not know how it's going to happen, but we trusted God. And I must tell you, to cut the long story short, the first thing we did was to bring the pastors together. Because the best way for you to bring peace in a community is if the church is united. And so we brought the pastors together in a pastor's training that I did for 3 days. And after that, we brought the community together. And they gathered close to 3,000 people in a tent. And 200 of them gave their life to Christ. And you can see these are the soccer teams. And we use sports because sports is a powerful tool where you can bring you together. And we use sports, and we were able to reach out to this community. These are warriors, people who use guns. But at this point, you could see they were happy. And it was one of the hardest missions, I would say, I've ever done in my life. We did not know how we're going to get out of that place. Jerry, in fact, when he was told...
Now, I'm pictured there, but I wasn't at that activity, okay? I
Jerry
assure
made
you,
sure to
I
add
wasn't
that.
there. I don't know how that picture got in there, but just to show that
so
we do activities.
This is one of the girls who was shot in one incident. And as you can see, behind there is a house. It's a small hut. And she was shot, and she actually is orphaned. But we're able to make sure that she has food. And one of the programs we have is an FGM program where we take what we call the dignity bags, which you can see is red in color, where it has sanitary towels, and it has several items that the young girl can use in such a difficult circumstance. And we partner with the Midwest Food Bank, and we were able to take food for her that will at least make sure she can survive, or she can have the food for 6 months as she takes medicine and recover. And she had gunshot wounds in one of her left leg, which is actually undergoing operation. And she survived because she was one of the girl who shouted, "I'm from your tribe, why are you shooting us?" And the gunman stopped. And so this was one of the things we did in the valley. Maybe you can move to the next slide. But we thank God again, because the only thing, in fact, even yesterday I watched news while I was here, there's still peace in that valley, even after we left. That shows you that our God is a big God. And so the other thing Jerry can say?
Yeah, so this was an incredible mission that God opened up for us to be able to do. And we have a partnership with the government, which has been great. But when we went and did this with the government, they brought vehicles up there.
Mm-hmm.
They brought security with us. It kind of really helped our credibility even more so that a nonprofit Christian ministry was able to go there. And so the gospel goes out, food goes out. You'll see at the end there that by God's grace over the last 4.5 years, we've delivered 800 tons of food, which is 10 million meals, and the gospel goes with it. So it's all over the country. So you've seen in this first part here kind of this partnership with the government. You've seen that we've gotten and done this special outreach. Now, these type of outreaches, sometimes with sports, we've done 30 of those over the last 4.5 years. And so we're constantly reaching out through sports programs, pastoral training, FGM, food deliveries, these type of things. So the next area here, now this just happened. This just happened just a couple of weeks ago in the northeastern part of Kenya. Is a drought that it gets up to 130 degrees there, and horrific drought.
And it has not rained for the last 6 years. And so the children, when the government mentioned to us that we need to do something, because we have a partnership with the government, and they said we need to do something. So we reached out to Midwest Food Bank for the food, and they gave us 16 tons of tender masses, which is high protein content, to fight acute malnutrition. And we were able also to add supplements, because as you can see, some of these kids cannot even eat food. They need what they call N75, because it's what they call severe malnutrition. If you give them food, they're going to die. So they need the supplements fast so that they can be able to eat the food. And so we had a very long conversation with Jerry. Again, it's a very long distance. and we needed to take also what they call the nurses, because they need also medical attention. So we have a group of doctors we work with who are Christian doctors. So we were able to partner with them, and we took 3 of them. You can see that is the supplement. The supplement is called N75. It's highly nutritious, and it's rich in protein. And one of the things we did was also to share the gospel, again, as we take the food. And maybe, Jerry, you can add something.
You'll see here in the next couple of slides, we brought a medical team up there because they were going to have to be able to help supply. In fact, the United Nations supplied the truck for us at no cost. It would cost probably, what, $3,000. The United Nations provide the truck for us. But you see here the nurses and different things like that. And the reason that the children's bellies are swollen is because they may eat something, but the reason they're swollen is because it's the lack of protein in their system. And the lack of protein makes their stomach swell. So the product that we're giving them out of little Bloomington, Illinois, where Spread Truth started, was an old farmer 15 years ago, had a shed and a truck broke down, and he said they had food on it, and he said, well, you can store it here and I'll give it out to some people. That began the Midwest Food Bank, which gives now last year $400 to $500 million food away. They have produced a product with the University of Illinois, highly nutritious protein called Tender Mercies. This is what all these people are getting, this high protein food that really is going to sustain them. So the reason, again, their stomachs are swelling is the lack of protein. This food has it. So these Christian doctors and nurses, along with our staff are giving the gospel out, are sharing it. They played with them some up there. This is in Turkana. Keep going, Matt, with the pictures that are there. I'll let Hamisi share this story here. This is another situation that happened in the pandemic.
I must say that the best time, I will say also, that we served with the government was during the pandemic. I think I came to Hope Chapel just before the pandemic. When I got back into the country, we were a bit worried as Spread Truth because we were thinking we do big events. And now with the pandemic, every place was shut, every church was shut, all the meetings, there was supposed to be no movement. But people now were dying in the slums. And the government said, we need to do something. And we came together, and that was what I could say the miracle that happened, because during the pandemic, we were able to visit 21 counties in our country. And we were able to serve as many people, and the government allowed us access to as many people as possible. One of the situations that we came across in the pandemic was this lady, she was sharing her testimony. She was talking about what the pandemic has done to her as far as her livelihood, because she was working, but she had to stop. And she had not eaten with her children a proper meal for over 1 week. And what she was doing, why she was crying, is this: because she will take stones and boil in, we call it in Kenya, a sufuria, like, what is it in a pot. And the reason she was boiling stones at night is that the children will think there is food cooking, so that they can go to sleep as they are waiting for the food. And now she was actually grateful that finally she has something to be able to eat. And she was thanking God. And so that story moved all of us in the team to imagine that you can do that so that you can be able to let the children just know there is food, but again, grateful to God that we are making a difference in the lives of these people.
This here is our staff and the medical teams too. That are there. Matt, you can keep going on with the next picture here. Again, one of our staff guys preaching the gospel to all of these people here. Again, you see the people there, and that's the food there. They're sitting on the ground, hearing the gospel, getting ready to be served. We can keep going. That's the Tender Mercies, standing in line, getting ready for the food in an extremely dry place. Now, this place is special to me. This is in another area called Kajerta. Will, if you come, you'll be doing pastoral training down here. This little church here is pretty rough, that tin building. Jeannie and I have been in that. Whenever it rains, it floods, and so we knew there needed to be another building built. And so by God's grace, now that building's gone. You see the slab, and we call this the Spread Truth Complex here. It's a new church building. Beside it to the left is a guest house, and then the next building is the FGM Rescue Center. Now, I know it's kind of a sensitive topic here and a mixed audience here, but it's female circumcision, which is a horrific thing that's going on in Kenya and the countries around it. And but so that happens in this area. But this area here, go back, Matt, just a second here. That area here is under severe drought right now. So Pastor Solomon is the pastor of the church. You see the guy in the purple there. This is his cows, and I don't know what I was doing vaccinating. I didn't have a clue what I was doing trying to vaccinate these cows. But Pastor Solomon had 110 cows. And Hamisi, how many does he have now?
I think he's left with 3 cows.
He lost them all because of the drought. And
this is the same complex close to the church where the cows died. And this is the worst drought that is in the Horn of Africa for the last 40 years. We've never experienced such a drought. There are places it has never rained for 6 years. And in Kajiado, this is now our food distribution we did just a month ago.
Yeah, at the church there, at the complex. So if y'all come to Kenya, you'll come down to this Spread Truth kind of complex here. And that leads into the crisis of FGM. I know it's a sensitive topic, but this is something that has to be dealt with. And by God's incredible grace, we're connected with Lena here, who's a woman in Parliament who drove the legislation to outlaw FGM in Kenya. And so she's been very gracious. Now you see that little book there. It says, it's titled, What is a Little Girl Worth? Spread Truth. There was a professor who taught at Northland University, a young lady, and she had a real burden for this whole subject matter. And she developed a curriculum which you say it seems like a Kenyan wrote it, right?
Yes, the curriculum is every girl or every teacher who comes across it thinks it was written by a Kenyan. That tells you the power of the Holy Spirit. Mm-hmm.
And see, so we've already taken 1,000 girls through the curriculum. So here are 300 girls that have gone through the FGM. Now, some of these girls have been cut. Some, they're getting cut as young as 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's just crazy things that are happening there and of what they're suffering there. But what has happened is we've trained these girls, but the government has come along and they just now certified the curriculum for all of Kenya. So this curriculum can go into any school now that we can teach these girls the dangers of FGM, how to avoid it, because it's technically illegal. And if their parents in the village are trying to push it, the parents have to be real discreet, because if the government finds out about it, they could get in real trouble here. And so we just now certified, and this is Roy and Hamisi here with all the girls that are there, just certified this curriculum. And I'm just going to ask you, listen, we need some ladies and young girls that will take this cause up. This is happening to these young girls, and what we've come along and said, hey, listen, we need to provide a curriculum that deals with how, to avoid it, but then what if it has happened to you? We deal with all the hygiene matters. We deal with forgiveness. It's a very, very thorough curriculum that these girls will be going through. We need people that'll raise the banner. Sometimes we go into churches and it's such a sensitive issue, nobody wants to even think about it. I just don't want to think about it. That sounds horrible. We got to have some people start to think about it and say, listen, something's got to be done. And so I'm not here to raise funding, but we're trying to share people for $8 a month. Guess what? We can provide food for an entire year for these girls. We can provide sanitary napkins for an entire year. We provide underwear for these little girls, and they're in these bags right here called dignity bags that we give them. Now, we can't fit all the food in there, obviously, but they do get a lot of stuff that's there. And maybe you want to tell this story, Hamisi?
Yeah, this is one of the girls who got born again. We've had actually over 200 girls too who have received Christ in the program. And this is a girl called Nikki. She got born again actually in the first class that I was introducing the curriculum. And when I finished, she came forward and started talking to me and mentioning that she was already married and cut, and she had 3 children. And she did not know what to do now. Does she go home? Does she go to the husband? And she's not even 18. And it was a very difficult situation, because what do you do? And luckily, by God's grace, she was able to go home and not go to her husband. And when Jerry came, I think this was the second visit, was able to meet her, and she's still born again, and praying to God that God will give her wisdom as to how she's going to navigate through that, because you already have 3 children with a man who is close to 60 years old. And that is that is why we have a rescue center, because that's where these girls go. It's always breaks my heart when I see these stories, when you listen to these stories, because it's not supposed to be that way. But I thank God at the same time, because the curriculum is making a difference. And that is why I want to say thank you, because without that, we don't know what we could be doing to these young girls. And that is why the government felt strongly this was the validation period, that we need to validate the curriculum so that it can go to as many people as possible. Because I have a little girl. I would imagine if she goes through that. And if you have a child, it's the most grotesque experience, because right now in Kenya, what the people are doing, they're doing it to the young girls at the age of even 1 month, because they don't want to be reported. And we are praying to God that this particular thing is going to end one day. But in the meantime, we have so many cases because of the drought again. You know, there's a big drought. So what is going on is people are selling their children so that they can be able to get money. And that is taking place. And so at the same time, God has opened a big door for us to be able to reach these people with the gospel. And that just happened 2 months ago, where the government validated the curriculum, saying that it needs to go to the whole country and it needs to go to the public schools.
So that here is the Kenyan School of Government, a big campus, and they brought people in, government officials, United Nations, all these had, and they looked over the curriculum. So it's thoroughly gospel-centered, okay? Thoroughly gospel-centered. And they looked, doctors were there, all these people were there, and they validated it. They don't mess with the gospel. They validated the curriculum. And so these were all the people that were involved in the validation of the curriculum. You see that on the left, on the right there, 3 of the people there holding up the curriculum. And so what's kind of crazy, I know sometimes I tell people it sounds like a fairy tale, but Hamisi's good friend Roy, who is over the whole youth of Kenya, who serves right underneath the president, is also the Secretary General for the Pan-African Youth Union, all the countries of Africa. He's a believer. He can have major impact that this type of curriculum with the gospel goes throughout different countries in Africa. So God is, by His grace, has just positioned key people. It's nothing that we've done. You know, these guys have worked hard, and so it's just been really wonderful. So because of your giving, the last 4.5 years, we've seen 5,700 people say yes to Jesus.
Amen.
What we didn't have time to show you the slides were the pastoral training that if Pastor Will comes. The last time I was there in February, we trained 500 to 600 pastors. There's so many pastors that want to be trained, and fortunately, Hanisi is very well connected. He can get as many pastors as we want, and they really want training. And so we've done a lot of pastoral training. We have built 2 churches. We have done 30 sports events. We've partnered with the government. We developed the FGM curriculum, delivered now, go back to the next slide here, delivered 800 tons of food. And what a blessing that we did not have to pay for the food. Can you imagine what 800 tons of Tender Mercy costs? You think it costs $300,000 or $400,000?
Yeah, thereabout.
Yeah, $300,000 or $400,000 is given to us free. We pay for the transportation and all, which equates out to about 10 million meals. So God's been very good. The next slide here, 1,000 girls have already completed the FGM curriculum. Over 700 pastors have been trained. 2 churches have been built, and the FGM Rescue Center has been built there too. And really it's possible because of all of you folks here and the heart that you have. We're all in this together. You pray, you give. You may not be able to ever go to Kenya, but you have a part in that. And there'll be a day when you stand before Jesus, and He'll say, "Well done, good and faithful servants." Amen. And you're just as much a part of what goes on in Kenya as they are when they go to the Cairo Valley, because they wouldn't be able to go and be able to do these things if it weren't for God's people praying and God's people giving. So you're a part of this of what's going on here. And we're not giving you the overall picture of everything Spread Truth does, but we can assure you this would never have happened if it wasn't for New York City. Because Missy came on a Thanksgiving trip, which we were just in New York City together at our Thanksgiving trip and a summer trip. And he says to me, hey, listen, I think I want to come on staff at Spread Truth. Now, I didn't know Missy that well. And he says, I think we can do this in Kenya. And we did sports camps and stuff like that. And I said, okay. So he came over on our summer trip, was with us for a week, and says, hey, listen, I think we can go back and do this. And I said, now, Missy, make sure you start really small when you do this stuff, okay? Don't try to get too big. Well, man, they'd go back, and it was crazy. I went over for it, and they got, a huge tent. I don't know how many people were there. It was crazy. And how many teams you had and things like that. And so God was good. And that began the journey then 4.5 years ago of partnering with the government. And it's kind of crazy because when I go into the governmental building, the youth structure there with the guy over the youth, we're sitting around with all the staff of the youth and Spread Truth staff, and we're singing, on Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. I don't think that can probably happen in the governmental offices here, and even in Greer, okay? I don't think it's going to happen. But, you know, so whenever we go into a meeting with the government, they want to have prayer, and they just had a change of government. So the lady that was Margaret, that was right underneath the president, who helped get us started, the new lady there is a converted Muslim, and she had Missy pray over the offices that are there. So it's been really, really good. And so we got like 2 or 3 minutes. Is there any question that you may have of anything of what's going on in Kenya? We hope to have Pastor Will here come February. I know you all say, yeah, he's coming, because every time, you know, something comes up, but we want to be able to have him over there. And hopefully maybe some of y'all would be able to come also and come. And I'd love for you to be able to minister to some of these girls that are there. We have an orphanage that we work with, the sports outreaches, the pastoral training, the food opportunities that are there. Anybody have a question about Kenya at all? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Anything else? Okay. Well, listen, again, we want to say thank you from the bottom of our heart for your support of Spread Truth Kenya and Spread Truth in general. And we'll be over at the fellowship hall afterward, I believe. And so if anybody has any questions or things like that. But thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much.